Hey guys, it's Quavith. Thought today I'd make a little bit of a video going into some issues that people have been having as far as getting their clients set up. I'm not going to make this specific to the Wing server. A lot of this stuff is going to be useful generally to any private server that you want to play on. It is all going to be catered to Ashita. I don't use Windor, have no clue how to use it, so if you're trying to use Windor, talk to somebody else. But I just wanted to go through a few things with people. Clear up some questions. So one of the big things that we've been getting people asking is about the stutter. There's an issue with Final Fantasy XI in general, no matter what server you play on. It actually also happens on retail, where if you're playing with the mouse and keyboard primarily, and you're not using a controller or don't have a controller input of any kind, and you leave the controller input configured, the game's going to look for it, and it causes intermittent video lag. For some reason, I can't explain why that happens, but I do know how to fix it. What you're going to want to do is you're going to want to go and find your FF11 config. And depending on the server that you play on, this is going to vary slightly. I think Nasomi actually has a custom build, and he uses the Tools EU folder for his stuff, but I'm not 100% sure about that. For Wings, and for most other private servers, you're going to want to find your Square Enix folder, which is where your game is installed. I have mine on my desktop here because I just put in a like a default Wings installation real quick just for this video. So I set it up, and I'm in my Square Enix folder, which is on my desktop. And you go into Final Fantasy XI, and then you go to your Tools US folder. And this is where you're going to find two very important programs for setting up your Final Fantasy XI client, no matter what you're trying to do. You'll see FF11 pad config, and this is going to be what you'll want to open if you want to change any of your controller settings if you are using a controller. And you're going to want to make sure you run these programs as administrator. It shouldn't matter in the long run, but it's always safer to assume that it does. Oh, sorry about that. I'm getting messages in game, it looks like. So if you're not playing with the controller, you're going to want to disable this here, which says enable gamepad. And that should fix any of the graphic stuttering that you have, any of those issues that you have. That disabling this will fix that for you. If you are playing with a controller, you really won't have that issue. I've never experienced it myself, and I do play with a controller primarily. This is my button layout. I use a Logitech F710 as my controller, which is a wireless controller made by Logitech, obviously. It simulates the DualShock 2 controller for the PS2. It's very similar, and I've used it for a long time. Works great for me. But this should also be the same button layout that you'll want to use for regular Xbox controllers, anything like that. So if somebody wants to snap a screenshot of this and you can set your buttons up the same way, then go for it. One thing I would recommend, and sometimes there is an issue when you're setting up a new client, for whatever reason, enable X input will be grayed out. Sometimes if you restart your computer and then come back to this will be ungrayed for some reason, and I think it has to do with your drivers for your controller sometimes not picking up properly. I've had to do that a couple of times. I reset my PC, and then no issue, works just fine. Additionally, when you're first setting up everything, you're also going to want to go into your Final Fantasy XI config, which is right here. And there's a few things you're going to want to do for a first-time setup to make sure that your game runs properly. So one of the first things that I'll always do is this is going to be, it's called enable MIP mapping. I think it comes default checked. I uncheck that. It sometimes causes a little bit of lag to leave it on. And from what I understand, it doesn't really do anything. And then also you'll want to change this to full screen mode. So for screen size, you're going to want to make sure that your screen sizes here all match what your actual resolution of the monitor that you're playing on is. So for instance, I have a widescreen 1920 by 1080, so that's what I have here. Same thing for menu resolution. For menu resolution, if you leave it blank like this, it'll just copy whatever is in the overlay graphics resolution. So that's what I did here. But you can also set it to whatever your resolution is also, and that works just fine as well. Textures, most modern PCs really aren't going to have any issues running uncompressed textures. You can pretty much run the game on the highest possible quality at all times, and unless your computer is, you know, an ancient relic from the past that you dug up out of your backyard or something, you'll probably be fine. I also enable bump mapping. It causes a little bit of lag sometimes too. When I was talking with Bubs, who's the one who makes the HD packs for the game, he said that this and MIP mapping could cause some issues, so I just disabled both of them to be safe. Environmental animations, smooth, obviously, since it's the highest setting. For sound, always on just means that your sound will play while you're not using Final Fantasy XI as an active window. I leave it on. Some people prefer to turn it off. It doesn't make a difference, whatever your preference is. A couple of other things here. I have my hardware cursor enabled. You can do whatever you want to do with this, doesn't matter. Make sure you check or uncheck show opening movie. Otherwise, every time you launch your game, it's going to show you this long cutscene with the mother crystal. It's super annoying. So I have that turned off. I don't know what simplified character creation visuals is. I assume it just makes it so that when you're in character creation, the characters just stand still. I don't know why you'd want that. The little videos are pretty cool. And then I don't know what graphics stabilization is. I haven't actually messed with that this much. I don't think Ashton told me to turn it off either. I don't know why it's unchecked. And then this is where you can set where all of your screenshots will go. So you want to make sure, like I said, the big ones in this menu specifically are going to be the screen size. These are going to be the big ones. Make sure that these match your resolution for your monitor. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to click on menus and things. They won't line up properly, and the game's going to look terrible. Anyway, I don't need to change anything there. Don't need that. Okay, so another question that I get asked a lot is why your FPS is capped at 30. There's a reason for this. The game natively runs at 30 FPS. However, there is an add-on. It's a default bundled with the Wings installer, so you don't need to do anything special to download it or anything like that. It comes with the package, and all you need to do when you get into game is type /FPS 2, and it'll set your FPS divisor to 2. FPS 2 is 30 FPS, and then if you're looking to set it to 60, you do FPS 1. And now we're at 60 FPS. You can see a little bit of a graphics difference, a little less stutter. Speaking of which, this is the GM land. Didn't want to do it out in the open, make this video. So yeah, that's how you set your FPS to 60. And then I want to go over some stuff for Ashita, specifically setting up your Ashita so that you'll be able to do... You can automate a lot of things in Ashita, and one of the nice things about being able to do that is that there's a lot of add-ons that you can add that you don't have to load up every single time, like that FPS one, for instance. There's going to be a file in your Ashita folder. And it's going to be it's in scripts, actually, called default. So in Ashita, you can actually change where this is used from. Let's see, I'll use my local Wings install as an example. So right here, it shows my script as default.txt. So if you just put default.txt, it's going to look for that in the scripts folder. However, you can put a full file path here, and you can use whatever you want, or you can change the name. Like if I wanted my default to be named mine or blueskill, I would just change this to blueskill.txt or mine.txt. Wherever you want to do it, whatever you want to name it works fine. I left mine as default. And then looking at your default, this is kind of what it's going to look like. Mine's going to be a little bit different than the regular default one, but let's go over it. So this is what it looks like. And this is going to load all of your plugins when you open your game. Basically, this script is going to run every time you boot your game up. So it's going to do a lot of things automatically for you. So for instance, it's going to do /load add-ons, /load window or input, /load Ashita cast. It's going to load all these add-ons here for you. Or actually, these are plugins. And then add-ons, it's going to do the same thing. So /add-on load distance, find all, checker, stuff like that. So basically, these are your add-ons that you have and you want to have loaded every single time you log in. a lot of useful things you can do here. So the filters add-on, for instance, is a really, really useful one. Private servers don't have the ability to set and save combat filters. So you're going to see the text of all the people around you that do damage. You're going to get a lot of clutter. The filters basically lets you set your filters and then save those filters to a text file. And then what it does is every time you walk into a different zone, it's going to reload that text file and save those filters and set them for you. So it'll cut down on the spam that you see in combat a lot. And the way that you use this add-on, the main thing that you want to do is go into game. Once you have the filters add-on loaded, which you do for the first time by typing filters or add-on load filters. It's going to say failed to load because I already have it loaded. But if you don't have it loaded, then it'll load it up for you. So what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to go into the game just like you normally would. And you're going to want to set your chat filters. So you'll notice right now that it says that all of my chat filters are off right now. That's totally normal because, like I said, on private servers, they won't save. And this is always going to look this way, even when the filters add-on is doing what it's supposed to do. However, what you'll do is you'll go through here and you're going to set the filters that you want. So let's say, for instance, I wanted to do, well, we'll go through and set them. This is kind of how I have mine set. And filters are going to, if you set them to on, then it's going to filter that out. So if you want to see says, then you want to leave that filter off, obviously. So let's see. So special actions started on and by you is things that people do to you. And also things that you do to yourself. You're obviously going to want to leave those on. These are all of your attacks and actions. You're going to want to leave those on. Special actions started on and by the party. Some people play with this on. Some people play with it off. I tend to leave it on because I don't really need to see when people begin casting spells in my party, things like that. I'm not really micromanaging to that point. If I am, I have a different filter thing that I can load that'll let me see that, so that's not really a big deal. This is all your actions by your party. Usually I have these filtered out completely, so let's turn all those on. I don't need to see my party's damage and stuff, that's fine. Same thing, this is for alliance, so this is groups that are bigger than just your party. Same thing, I always turn these on as well. And then special actions started on and by foes. So that's going to be monsters when they do something that affects either you or somebody in your party. So I leave these off so that way I can see when monsters are about to use a TP move and who they're targeting. Attacks by foes I leave on. Missed attacks by foes. Attacks evaded by foes. So this is a little bit strangely worded. But it's basically the monster's attacks on people. But it really only applies to you. Or I wish they had worded it differently. But yeah, it's a little strange. And then special action started on and by others is another one that's a little bit strangely worded. This is going to show when people start using effects on something, but doesn't show when they finish. So like if somebody starts casting refresh on me, I'll be able to see that they started casting it, but I won't see any of the text that corresponds with it after that's already gone off. And then attacks by others is people outside of your group. I always turn all this off because I don't need to see that. It's just people nearby that you could be walking by. Special actions started on and by NPCs is kind of optional. Basically, it's exactly what it implies. It's NPCs that you're either grouped with in some way, which mostly applies to trusts and like adventuring fellows and stuff like that. You won't run into that super often, but it is useful to know what it does. And this is lot results, campaign related data. Those are pretty self-explanatory. Tell messages deemed as spam. I don't believe that one works. Shout and yell messages deemed as spam. Same thing. Job emotes. You can actually also filter out check messages, which I was not aware of. Bazaar notices, so when people look in your bazaar, and countdowns. I don't know what the countdowns one is. I've never seen that one before. And then messages from alter egos is also a trust thing, so that's for retail. Some of these may not even show up. I'm on a retail install right now because I've been doing some capturing, but the Wings client may look a tad bit different as far as the filters go, but not much. So yeah, you're going to set these filters for the filters add-on. You're going to back out of here, and then you'll type filters, save, and then specify a file name for that filter. So if I wanted to save these filters the way they are, I would do testing. So now I have a file that's called testing.txt in that folder. And actually I don't have it in this one because, or maybe I do. Yeah, I'm looking at a different folder. But that's okay. For all intents and purposes, we'll say that it would be in the scripts folder. But I'm looking at a totally different install than my Wings install. So this is my retail install. But yeah, if I were on retail, it would save in this folder as testing.txt. And then what you would do, if you want that to load every time that you zone, you want to make sure that filters always loads whenever you boot up. So here you go. Right here, you'll have add-on load filters in your default. So every time you start your game, all these will load up for you. And then here at the bottom, I have filters load and then one.txt. One is my basic filters that I always want to use, which are just my, my everyday ones. Kind of like very similar to the ones that I just did on the test.txt. So if I wanted to use that one, I would do it testing.txt, just like we saved it in the file. And then I would save this file, and then every time I boot up my game, it would load up all these add-ons for me. And you can use any add-ons you want on here, obviously within the rules of the server that you're playing on. So for instance, on here, I have, you can turn your draw distance up using draw distance. Find all is another one that I find pretty useful. It lets you type in a chat command to look for items in your inventory based on name. So I'm trying to think of, I don't know, an item I could use. Find all judge. There we go. So it searches all the characters I have for whether or not I have judges gear, which there we go. I have judges gear on all those characters, and it'll show you where they're located in the inventory. So, they're in my wardrobe or my inventory, etc. Another useful one that a lot of people don't know about is Chatmon. And Chatmon is a nice add-on to have. It does a lot of different things, but mostly it lets you know when people are sending you messages. It adds like little dings and notifications and things. I really like Chatmon. It lets me know when I get messages, even when I have my game minimized like I do right now. Like earlier you heard the little AOL sound go off. That was somebody sending me a tell. So that's how I know I got a message. So that's pretty nice to have. Beyond that, the rest of these pretty much, I believe, all come loaded default into the Wings installation. I think the only one that doesn't, that I have on here, up here or at the top, is Ashita Cast. I don't think it loads automatically, but it is very useful. And I don't want to make this video all about Ashita Cast because you could go on forever about how useful Ashita Cast is. But yeah, this is what all these do. A couple of other things that you can do just to maximize how your game looks, and some function that most people don't know about that's pretty useful. If you'll notice, a lot of times people don't realize that you can turn off the animations of the menus. So for instance, you see how normally the game is going to look like this. I'll just turn it back on real fast so that people can see what I'm talking about. Okay, so it's called a window effect, actually. So you see how the menus kind of play that little animation when they switch between them and fade in and out? Well, and even when you switch into menus and stuff like that, it plays a little zooming in of the new menu. Well, the animation is kind of slow and laggy, and when you're going through menus really fast trying to get to spells and abilities and stuff, it can be kind of a hassle to sit there and wait for that animation, and it's kind of choppy and ugly too. So I like to turn those off, and you do that by going into Config, and it's under Windows, under Shared, it's under Window Effect. You just turn that off, and now you'll see when I switch my menus back and forth, it's instant. It's much faster, much more reactive. It's very useful. A lot of people don't even realize that it exists. It's a pretty big deal. Real big game changer as far as I'm concerned. Some other things that you can do in the game client itself that are pretty useful. One of the first things I do anytime I make a character, obviously turn my music and sound down, because you guys know how that goes. It's ear-bleedingly loud. I'll turn my inventory to auto sort. It's like the second thing I do after I turn the music and volume down. A couple other things that are really useful to know are the party icon displays and the timer displays. So party icon displays will let you know what buffs that people have in your party if you mouse over them or have them hovered. I don't have anybody in party right now, so it's kind of that's kind of unfortunate, but let me see if I can borrow somebody real quick. None of my normal... Haha, we found one. We'll go over that here shortly while we're waiting on him to respond. Perfect. All right. I didn't actually expect him to respond that quick. That was fantastic. Okay. Also helps if you can type. So what you'll see here is down here, underneath his name, you'll see what buffs he has. So right now he has Shell and Signet on. And if he had more buffs, then obviously more of them would show up. Let's throw Protect on him or something.
Incoming emote.
Oh, that was Chatmon, where it said incoming emote. That was Chatmon letting me know somebody emoted at me. But yeah, that's all that does. It's pretty useful to be able to see what buffs your party members have. It lets you know if they're using food when they're partying and stuff like that. Very helpful. All right, let's go back to GM land real quick, and we'll keep recording. Here we go. All right, so the next part is going to be timer display. So timer display lets you know how long that you have on your own buffs. And since I have so many buffs on right now, it's actually not going to show me because I have too many. But let's say... Actually, it doesn't seem to be working at all. That's pretty strange. I have attained transcendent power. I don't know what that means. But let's throw, unless that's just it might be an infinite buff. So infinite buffs won't show a timer. Let's throw Protect on myself. Hey, there we go. Okay, so that'll show underneath the duration of the buffs. If that's turned off, it'll just show a little icon. You won't actually see anything. So if you want to know how long that your buffs are going to last for, make sure you have timer display on. I'm just going to go through a couple of other things as well. Personally, I tend to turn off some of the more redundant things that don't really matter, just for the sake of performance, because 11 can be a little bit laggy. So I turn weather effects off. Sandstorm weather, for some reason, makes my client lag, even though, you know, my computer is pretty modern and it shouldn't. The game is just, it gets choppy in sandstorms. So rather than worry about it, I just turn it off. But really, that's really the main one. A couple of other things you can do that are useful. You can actually split up the windows so that you can see combat on one side and like your link shell and everything on the other. You do that by going to config windows and then shared. You can split it up two different ways. You can have one on top of the other, or you can have them side by side. Most people do side by side. Whatever you want to do. And then you go, once you have it split that way, you go to window 1 and it'll let you change how wide it is. So Obviously, here you go. This is changing the width. And then maximum lines displayed, so you can determine how, you know, how tall before it starts fading down it can get. Totally up to you. Doesn't matter. I keep mine at 8 because that's the default, and I don't really care. Same thing for window 2. You can change the size, and it changes variably like that. Same thing. I have mine on 8. You can change how often the windows shrink automatically, which I just leave mine on the default too. And like I said, some people, they'll put their link shell chat on one side and then their combat chat on the other, which is looks like how it's split up by default anyway. You can change what shows up where in here as well. If you go to log, it'll let you pick what's what in which window. So I like how they have it set up by default where it does one on one side and one on the other, but you can do whatever you want to do. And yeah, aside from that, that's pretty much all I can think of to cover in this video. Like I said, it was just some common things that make quality of life a little bit easier for people. If anyone can think of anything else to add, definitely let me know. You know how to find me on Discord. You can also leave comments in the comment section if that's what you want to do. Anyway, this has been fun. Thanks for watching, and have fun.